Whether it's Parma ham or the Airbus A380, Europe makes things that the rest of the world wants to buy. That's the nature of trade, and it's hugely important to Europe's economic future. Trade policy decisions affect us in many ways: consumer choice, prices, quality, safety, standards, etc. Trade is also a vital bridge to other policy objectives, not only commercial, but also sustainable development goals like a better environment or higher safety standards in foreign factories. EU trade policy is successful because it's one of the areas where the Union speaks with one voice. Decisions are not made from an ivory tower. Citizens, business, and other stakeholders can all participate in the process. The European Commission's trade team has a regular dialogue with civil society before, during, and after deciding on trade policy or when negotiating agreements. This improves transparency and accountability. The Commission does not trade goods or services or favor certain industries. What it does do is set the best possible legal, economic, and political environment so businesses can do their job better. Thanks to the single market, the EU is a trade superpower, but it needs to up its game to remain competitive. There is a lot riding on it. 30 million EU jobs depend on trade. In fact, trade is a powerful weapon against the economic crisis gripping Europe. Selling cars, medical instruments, cosmetics, turbines, brings in much-needed earnings, takes pressure off public finances, and even supports new inventions, technologies, and processes. Trade is an engine for growth. Each additional €1 billion of exports creates some 15,000 more jobs across the EU. But trade faces many hurdles: unnecessary red tape in countries outside the EU, slowing down the flow of goods, different product standards, and the dumping of products at artificially low prices, for example, because of subsidies. Luxury products, but also technical and industrial inventions coming from Europe, need protecting from fakes. Some of our most creative sectors depend on it, and so do consumers whose safety, even health, may be put at risk. It's tempting to try to protect markets from competition, but that doesn't work. In order to export, you also need to import. And trade is the conveyor belt that links Europe to the new global growth centers. It's a unique source of productivity gains for Europe to tap. In the future, most worldwide growth is expected to be generated outside Europe, so today, it's critical to engage not just with major players such as the US and Japan, but also with emerging and dynamic economies like South Korea, India, and Brazil. New trade agreements could boost EU output and create new jobs. Now you know why trade matters. It's a path to economic recovery. Trade policy shapes the legal, economic, and political environment. It doesn't favor particular products, sellers, or countries. The EU is an important player when it comes to trade, but in a competitive world, it must remain vigilant to make sure others play by the rules of the game. We need to combat issues such as counterfeiting and piracy. Having a dialogue with civil society and stakeholders is vital because trade policy affects everyone.
The US and China are the two largest single-country economies in the world, so it's little surprise that the American internet giants have Chinese equivalents. How do they stack up against each other? Google's equivalent in China, Baidu, looks quite similar in terms of site design and revenue model, but when it comes to market share, there's really no comparison. The closest thing China probably has to Facebook is RenRen, but a snapshot in May showed that RenRen had much fewer registered users as a percent of total internet users in the country. These examples contrast sharply with the success of China's Twitter counterpart, Weibo, which has both more registered accounts and active users than Twitter. Yet China's biggest internet success, Tencent, is a site that has no US peer. Hosting a variety of web services ranging from instant messaging to multiplayer online games, Tencent is the third largest internet business in the world, behind Google and Amazon. As China moves toward becoming the world's largest economy, do you think it'll begin to compete with the US as the global leader in internet innovation? Tweet us what you think at What's Trending.
This is a presentation of the latest global literacy data. Let's take a look at the numbers. There are an estimated 774 million illiterate adults, age 15 or older. 2/3 of them are women. That's 493 million women who struggle to read a prescription, fill out a form, or even send a text message. What about youth? There are 123 million illiterate youth in total. Of them, 76 million, or 2/3, are female. Even though the number of youth who can't read or write is getting smaller, the proportion of young illiterate women isn't. Let's take a closer look. Where do illiterate women live? 54 million of the world's 76 million young illiterate women live in only 9 countries. India alone is home to an estimated 27 million illiterate girls, represented by the yellow bar, followed by Pakistan with 7 million, and Nigeria, which has 6 million. Some parts of the world have seen a steady rise in literacy rates. In South and West Asia, for example, literacy among young men and women, represented in dark green, has risen from 60% in 1990 to 80% in 2011, the latest data. It should climb another 8 to 10% by 2015. Other regions have seen youth literacy rates stagnate and remain far from the Millennium Development Goal of cutting illiteracy in half by 2015. This is the case in sub-Saharan Africa, where the number of literate youth has risen only 4% in the past decade. By 2015, about 75% of youth in the region will be able to read and write. But millions of young people will still be falling through the cracks. By the year 2030 in Egypt, the gender gap will close, but there will still be more than 600,000 illiterate youth, evenly divided between young women, in yellow, and young men, represented in green. Mali will have over 1 million illiterate youth. And India will have close to 8 million. Of that, more than 4 million will be young women. So who are these illiterate adults of the future? They're among the 57 million children who are not in school today. 1 in 2 of these children lives in sub-Saharan Africa. Half of them will never enter a classroom. The other half has dropped out or will start school late. Globally, an estimated 250 million children of primary school age lack basic reading and writing skills, whether they're in school or not. This is because of the poor quality of teaching and learning. How can we change their destiny? Let's keep our promise. Education for all children. For a copy of this infographic, please visit www.uis.unesco.org.
World military spending. This means the expenditure by a country's government on the military forces, that is, maintenance and operations, military research and development, military aid, salaries and pensions, and many more. The military expenditure of every country is ironically given by the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute. The data given by the SIPRI is based on the data provided by the national governments. We all know that the United States of America is one of the most advanced and developed countries in this world, noticeably in the field of military. Statistics of the top 8 countries are: United States of America, $682 billion; China, $166 billion; Russia, $90.7 billion; United Kingdom, $60.8 billion; Japan, $59.3 billion; France, $58.9 billion; Saudi Arabia, $56.7 billion; and India, $56.7 billion. The military spending of USA is 6 times more than China, 11 times more than Russia, 48 times more than Israel, and 100 times more than Iran. Though China is often cited as the world's next great military adversary, US military spending currently doubles that of all the countries in Asia combined. The slogan "for the people, of the people, and by the people" is not relevant regarding the distribution of taxes. Building nuclear weapons cost US $17 billion. Every kid on earth could be educated for $12 billion. Spending money on something that causes pain and destruction over world peace is not the right way. Prioritize the taxes. Make this world a better place to live in.